All right, Ross, developments in the House case. The House case is the big lawsuit from attorney Jeffrey Kessler. We've talked about it. It is the one that will really push the domino of employment of players and everything. This is a big case. I know there's a lot of cases. We do not want to get in the weeds here. We've gotten in the weeds enough. We don't need numbers. We don't need this or that. I thought that the two interesting things was if there is a settlement paper, you can describe it, but that it requires the players to also advocate to Congress that they get an antitrust exemption for college sports. And then everything else to me is and they want to have an investigative body that will crack down on fake NIL, which is basically collectives. It's funny because these people's unwillingness to see that the finish line was going to be and to try to create guardrails when there should never have been one has now created collectives that they now have to guardrail again, like that. Like they're going and they're chasing their own tail here. They created the problem they're now trying to solve with some expensive and highly fruitless investigative thing. Those are the two most interesting things. The other most interesting is this proposal came out and every lawyer I know texted me and said, this doesn't stand a freaking chance. So without giving too many details, where do we stand on this and why do they think this is going to work? I assume they have lawyers also. I don't know.
Yeah, the portion of this memo that went to various general counsels and presidents in power conference leagues, the portion of it, as you noted, that's probably most interesting and kind of shocking, is that the plaintiffs, according to this, have agreed as part of the proposed settlement to cooperate with the NCAA's congressional lobbying effort seeking an antitrust exemption. It's hard to believe. I had to read that one multiple times on the document. So I don't know how that would work. I don't exactly know why the plaintiffs would agree to that. And it's hard to believe that the two leading attorneys in this, Jeffrey Kessler and Steve Berman, will now work in support of the NCAA's lobbying effort after years of working against them, specifically working against them. Steve Berman told me over the weekend that he literally went to Capitol Hill to work against the opposite of what Charlie Baker was working for. And now, apparently, according to this, agreed they will agree to cooperate. I think the other thing, a lot
of money in this settlement now. A lot of money.
Yeah,
a lot of billable hours get billed.
That's right.
They have not gotten any money back on this settlement. So you want to settle if you're an attorney. If that means you got to go talk to a senator or two. Hey, man.
Yeah, maybe so.
On your way to Cancun.
And I think the other thing, some of the other things that are interesting that are non-monetary or things that weren't publicized previously is the settlement. It does allow a shift into some kind of employment model, and it says specifically with collective bargaining, which we talked about collective bargaining quite a bit on this show, and how it is probably the end result of all this. At the end of the road is some kind of collective bargaining. So that was quite interesting. And then there's the last part that you mentioned, right? Is it the document says under the proposed settlement terms, the court will, quote, reaffirm the NCAA's remaining compensation rules, and that includes booster pay for what they term not true NIL, and schools will have an economic incentive. So I assume some kind of financial incentive to bring collectives in-house. So the whole goal of this settlement, part of the goal, is to eliminate collectives. But as you said, Dan, a lot of attorneys reach out to me as well. A lot of folks in the collective world saying that this is not going to fly. This doesn't make any sense. And yeah, I don't have a law degree, so I have no idea how it would work. But certainly those are some of the interesting concepts that answer some of the big questions. I think there are a few big questions here. One of them being, how do you enforce the collective space? Will it continue to be the Wild West? And this is their answer, at least in this memo.
Yeah. Great job getting the memo. My biggest initial question from this, beyond the logistics that you guys are talking about, is there's a to. The memo is to some people. Who is it from? Who wrote the memo? Whose document is this? Do you know?
Yeah,
we're revealing sources, Pat.
Well, I just
sidetrack.
Well, yeah.
Sources.
Is it NCAA generated? Is it the SEC's attorneys? Is it somebody like, that's what I want to know. This reads very much as a take the deal memo.
Right.
You don't have to answer that question. Pat does not deserve the truth. I want the truth.
The memo is pretty clearly encourages settlement, right? Encourages the people who might see it, which I think were administrators, power conference administrators, and presidents and general counsels. I think it encourages them to into a settlement, and it comes at certainly a timely stretch here, where over the next week and a half, presidents will meet to potentially adopt this. So they kind of sent this out. Where it comes from, I think, our attorneys working on the case, the general count from the power conferences and from the NCAA. I think that's where it's originally. You can just tell how the way it's written that it was derived from council, from power conference councils in NCAA council.
Yes, to you guys' point, like if I would say this, if the NCAA can pull this off and the power conferences to get this as the settlement and get players, athletes to lobby Congress on their behalf and actually still have some potential rules, then I'd say they've come out of this okay.
And take just a 20%, 21% revenue share?
Right.
Woo.
No. I
mean, they pulled a fast one there. That is a huge
I will
victory.
say this, and I will go back. Was it early December when Charlie Baker trotted out the first idea, kind of, and it's evolved significantly since then, but I think it was pretty significant of him to get the ball rolling of, hey, we really have to actually do something different here. We are not going to win in court, and we have got to rethink how this is all going to work. And I think he did a much better job than any other NCAA president in history has done of getting out in front of change and trying to get people prepped for change. And now we're seeing change coming.
Yeah, at the time of Charlie Baker's proposal in December, obviously we know now, this has been going on for negotiations in the House settlement, been going on for about 9 months, so last August. And at the time in December when he released that, obviously they were right in the thick of things. And the worry from many, including several commissioners who expressed it publicly, including Greg Sankey, was that it would negatively impact the litigation talks. And I remember asking Charlie Baker in January at the NCAA convention in Phoenix how he felt about the possibility of this impacting litigation. And he basically gave a verbal shrug. He didn't think it would. And if you look at the settlement and see the terms, it doesn't necessarily look like it impacted much at all. It's honestly fairly similar to what he proposed. And I think I don't know that it really impacted things all that much.
Pat trying to get Ross's sources.
Yeah. That's right.
That's really where this.
Oh, I'm reading the story as a consumer of the news, and I'm like, all right, whose document is it?
Yeah,
that's my only question.
Yeah, that was it.
Ross did a good job not answering it. He did. He said, general counsels or lawyers. So
it's clearly it's clearly an attorney document.
Yes.
This is something I obviously didn't write in the story, but. Stamped throughout the document, it says privileged and confidential.
There you go.
So didn't seem to stop the dissemination of the document.